Hi, this is Damon Pistolka, host of the Faces of Business podcast, where we talk to interesting people about life and business. We cover their backgrounds, obstacles they've encountered, and find out what drives them. Along the way, our guests share nuggets you can use to drive your success. Reach me directly, DAMON at exityourway.us, or check out our website, exityourway.us, for more information. I hope you enjoy our show. All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I'm your host, Damon Pistolka, and with me today, I am so excited. I've got John Lamy, Lamy Consulting here today. John, it's an honor to have you on, man.
Hey, Damon, it's a privilege. And just from talking the last 5 minutes, I'm really, really excited about being with you today.
Oh, I know. We didn't even know. This could have just changed the whole conversation, because we were going to talk about, and we're going to talk about achieving satisfying business results, but we were talking a bit about some other things here, and we'll get into them later. But man, I am so excited to uncover a few nuggets, a few cool things about your background, because it is so nice to be able to talk with someone like yourself about some of the things you've seen and your passion and how you've applied that and how you help people. So, John, if we can, let's talk a little bit about your background. You've got a very interesting background.
Well, as a kid, I grew up in the Midwest in a little town called Sedalia, Missouri. 20,000 people, conservative town.
Is that the place where they have the throat rolls?
No.
Oh, different. I'm thinking of a different one. Okay.
Different place. Okay.
I used to drive through Missouri a lot.
We do have the state fair in Sedalia, Missouri.
Okay.
So every year we'd have the big thing come around.
Nice.
Well, I'm going to talk kind of left brain, right brain. That I think is important to where I wound up, 50 years later as a business guy. So talking left brain, as a little kid, I was very interested in radio. They didn't have computers back then, but radio was hot. So as a little kid, 7 years old, I built a radio, and then 8 years old, built a better one, and like that. All the way through high school, built radios, built a stereo at one point.
Wow.
And then went on to MIT, got a degree in electrical engineering, which was a continuation of that. I still remember sitting in a big lecture hall, and the guy's talking about that. Now, this is a capacitor. We're going to talk about capacitors today, and it's E equals J theta, whatever. And this guy next to me says, "Hey, John, what's a capacitor?" And I said, "Well, it's a little gizmo about the size of a firecracker." Oh, okay. Because see, I knew all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it really helps to have the hands-on.
Yeah.
So I got a job with Hewlett Packard making. They didn't make computers back then, but they made electronic instruments.
Yeah.
And they're now called microwave. It's radio kind of equipment.
Yeah.
I had a great ride. I was an R&D manager in that area for quite a few years. But at some point, I got a very interesting promotion to be quality manager for a division of about 1,000 people. So I was essentially in the C-suite. And that jogged something in my head. I was always a techie guy, but I got interested in what makes the enterprise work.
Yeah.
And what makes it not work, because there's a lot of not work out there too.
Yeah.
I got real interested in that. To the degree that 5 years after I got that job, I left the company and went back and got an MBA at Cornell, just because I'm interested in how these companies work. And I was a consultant basically ever since. So I worked for a couple of small mid-sized consulting firms and so on. But it all kind of hinged on this deal of how does what makes a company work?
Yeah. So I got a question back at the beginning.
Yeah.
How does someone in Sedalia, is that the right name of the town?
Yep.
Missouri, end up at MIT? I mean, did you have
Yeah.
someone at school or relatives that had gone there, or how did you really do that? Because I mean, I grew up in the Dakotas, man, and we didn't even know how to spell MIT.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a little bit unusual. The guidance counselor said, "Don't apply there, John. You won't get in. Nobody gets in there." But I had a math teacher who
Yeah,
really believed in me, and he was fantastic. Just a great guy all the way
yeah,
around. And he would give me extra hard problems. Like, kids would be walking out of the class in high school, and he'd say, "Hey, John, work on this problem here." And I'd work on it for a couple of days because it was hard.
yeah.
So he was kind of it. And I did have an uncle, my dad's brother, that went to MIT a long time ago.
Okay.
So it kind of put it within the realm of possibility,
Yeah,
but it was a shock. I mean, I jumped on that airplane in
yeah,
Kansas City, flew back there, and I mean, holy cow.
yeah,
So big
yep,
deal.
yep.
And
And we've got Steve Rice and Scott Shumway here as well. And Steve just dropped your Lamy Consulting link in the comments. But yeah, glad to have you guys here. But yeah, so you get on. So you're there. Was that the first time? I would assume it's first time you got on a plane, right?
no, we had done a little bit of travel, but not a
Okay,
whole lot. Yeah.
okay,
But it was a
okay.
huge deal to jump in, and you go back to Boston, Cambridge, and you're with a higher caliber, an average of a higher caliber of people.
Yeah,
I was in a fraternity, and the guys were great. The professors were great. The whole deal, just Boston itself, from a kid from the country to
yeah,
do that, it was really, really neat.
yeah.
So
So did you grow up on a farm then, or did you grow up in
no,
town? Oh,
in
you're in
town,
town. Okay,
yeah, yep.
okay. Very good.
And I was kind of, you might say, upper middle class. My dad was a doctor, one of the
Okay.
few doctors in the town.
Yep.
But that was the kind of deal at dinner table, phone rings, and somebody's just broken their arm and he's got to go off. A
Yeah.
lot of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, anywho, I just had a great ride. I loved Hewlett Packard back then. It was a great company. Bill and Dave, Hewlett and Packard.
Did you actually
Um,
meet them?
oh, yeah. Yep.
Oh,
No, I
wow.
wasn't boozing buddies, but I sat
No,
next to
no.
Dave Packard at a dinner one time and had a good chance to chat with him. In fact,
Oh
you'd
my
like this.
goodness.
You'd like this story. He was the Under Secretary of Defense in,
Yep.
I believe, Nixon's years. And so this was shortly after that, and we were sitting at dinner together. I said, "So that must have been great being back there. What's the best thing that occurred?" He said, "I gave up smoking." meaning it sucked. He
Yeah.
said, you'd go to one committee meeting and here's this congressman making a statement, and you go to the next committee meeting, same guy, opposite statement, no integrity. And Packard wasn't like that. Packard was high on integrity. So
Wow.
it's just interesting to pick up on that view of Washington.
Yeah.
So
No doubt. But I mean, those two guys were legends. They're
legends,
legends. Legends in
they were.
the global sense.
Yep.
Legends.
And the thing that they did more than anything else, and this has been said a million times, but they said, let's believe in our people. Let's pay them well. Let's give them responsibility. Let's trust them. And I'm amazed as a consultant. I'm just amazed at how infrequently that policy happens.
Yeah.
I had a client for a few years, and his policy was pay him as little as you can, because why? It's an expense. You don't want to have a high expense. And I said, dude, you got to pay him in the top, I'm going to say, quartile. You don't want to be the very, very tippy top, because then you're kind of pissing off everybody else. You're
Yeah.
dragging the thing up. But if you pay them the top quartile, you're going to satisfy a hygiene factor. They're not going to leave because they're going to get a better job somewhere else. But you're going to keep the good people. You're going to keep the good people.
Yep.
He wouldn't do it, but Hewlett
Yep.
Packard did, and we just tended to attract good people, and that's the biggest lesson I got from Bill and Dave, is really trust the people, take care
That's
of them.
amazing, dude. That's amazing
Yep.
that you actually shook hands with them. So I mean,
Oh
just
yeah.
being in the same damn room with them is something to say.
Well, I'll tell you another story. That was Dave Packard. This is Bill Hewlett. Bill was more the techie guy. So I was working on a microwave spectrum analyzer. I won't try to explain what that is, but he came around to see it. I had a group of guys, about 20 engineers working on this thing, and this is when your heart swells up. I was showing it to him, and I had to see. He said, "No, wait." He said, "Now, you mean to tell me I'm seeing an 18 gigahertz signal, and I'm seeing a 60 hertz sideband on that signal?" I said, "Yes, sir. That's what that is." And he says, "Well, I'll be goddamned," just like that. And I mean, I almost cried. In fact, I can feel it even as I sit here.
Yeah.
Just the feeling of having, here's this guy, he's the president of the company, and he is still enough of an engineer, and he just was amazed. It's like, and an engineer, you work hard on something, and when somebody appreciates the real substance of it, um, he
Oh,
walked on
that
water
is.
for the rest of my life. Yeah,
That is an amazing story because he understood the effort it took to do that.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
because it's like if you saw a second sun and somebody said, I just created the second sun out there because it was, the difficulty in it and the technical challenges, but you did something that they thought may not have been possible until they saw it.
Right.
Oh,
Exactly.
wow, that's crazy. That's
It,
crazy
and it
stuff,
goes
man.
back to, he could have just been, well, whatever. But he essentially gave me and my team a big affirmation by saying that, just like that.
Yeah, no
So,
doubt. Well,
yep.
we've got Steve's making comments, and he's some great comments about you. I agree 100% there, Steve. And
Wow.
then
Thank you, Steve.
Scott drops one too.
Wow.
Master of turning chaos into order. Awesome.
All right.
Awesome, guys. Yep.
That's good.
Yep. But oh my goodness. I would just that
Well,
is something. I mean, because you're talking about how old were you when this happened?
oh, probably my 30s,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, right.
Somewhere in there.
Right in the
It was big.
beginning.
I was managing this group of R&D guys.
Yeah.
And we came
Yeah.
out with what became the gold standard for spectrum analyzer for quite a few years.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
well, let me snap clear back.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the left brain, kind of the rational.
Yeah, your technical part. But then you started to
thing.
think about human behavior and other things. So kind of what triggered that?
Yeah. I was raised as a very devout Catholic.
Yeah.
In a very conservative town. My family was Republican, but as they say, as Rachel Maddow says, Eisenhower Republicans are what we call liberals today. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, I was raised in that kind of environment. Very devout Catholic. Did everything according to the book. My junior year at MIT, I took a class on Eastern religion. I just took it. You're supposed to take. They require every engineer to take one humanities class every semester.
Mm-hmm.
So good. Well, the professor was fantastic. I got very interested in it. I started meditating at that point. There was a group in Cambridge, right there near where I was, and I used to go and meditate with them. But I got very touched by it. Now, I didn't just abandon my Catholicism all at once. I think it took 5 or 10 years for it to kind of go away, you might say, and get gradually pushed out by a newfound awareness of the interior life. The way I was raised with Catholicism was pretty much ritualistic.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of an interior life was not a part of it, frankly. That's just where we were now. I know in some places that's not true at all, but that for me it was. But what happened was the idea that you have something going on inside that has to do with your emotions, your human development, and in the big picture, it's how egocentric you are versus other-centric, how insecure you are versus feeling comfortable in your skin, how reactive you are. Things happen and can piss you off, and you can stay that way for a long time.
Yep.
You can repress things. Like I remember, like I said, conservative family, my mother used to say, Johnny, don't be a smart aleck. I'd do something and she'd say, oh, don't be a smart aleck. And so that tended to me to smooth down and
Yeah.
take away any sense of going rah rah. You just didn't do that in my family, and so that gets repressed and kind of taken away, and it just you slightly become a victim a little bit when you do that. You project things onto other people, either good or bad. On minorities, you project they're lazy, they're stupid, whatever. On outstanding people, you say, "Oh man, they must be great." You can't imagine them doing something fundamentally evil. So your perception, if you don't have an awareness of your interior life, you are at risk of having perceptions that aren't quite right, judgments that are inappropriate, projections onto other people. Bad habits will well up and kind of take over, and they're hard to eradicate or hard to make peace with. So facing your own inner demons and your own cravings, that's an important part. So after college, moved to California and basically started going to things like week-long retreats and stuff like that. Even back in the day, in the early 70s, when I first moved to California, my wife and I.
Yeah.
So, point being, that side of yourself, if you don't attend to it in some way or another, you're not going to be as capable. You're not going to be as whole and as alive as you could be otherwise. And that starts to bring us back now to why companies get screwed up and why leaders are less than as capable as they could be. We've all had bosses who I've had a whole bunch of them, but one in particular stands out. Very, very smart guy, genius in the sense of being out of the box.
Yeah.
But you couldn't live with them. You just couldn't. I eventually moved from one division to another, as did other people, and eventually his job just kind of went away, and he went away. You've got to attend to that side of things. So that becomes for me an important aspect of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that's the left brain, right brain side of John Lamy and how I came to be where I am.
Yeah. Steve drops a comment about 15 minutes becomes a spiritual advisor. And I think that, and Curtis, thanks for stopping by today, Curtis, man. It is interesting and listening to John speak. I'm sure it will continue to be. But we talked about this before we got on, and we hadn't even discussed this prior, but this is something that I've been working on for the last year and a half or so, and really discovering and understanding. And man, people are listening. I got to tell you, you need to start thinking about different things inside of you to really unlock your full potential. And I think this is one of the things that we miss, and we'll get on to your study of human behavior, because I want to talk just a moment about a skosh about some of the things that I've learned, and then what you see when you're helping organizations. Because for me, being new to it, and reading, trying to learn, trying to understand, and meditating a little more and building up on that, and some of the other things that people do when you talk about affirmation and daily exercise, and the things that you can really do to work on yourself to get your mind right, to get your mind in the right place. I find in myself that comparatively, I don't get angry nearly as much. I mean, because when I was young in my 30s, it shot off the chart pretty easily, and it definitely got better as I was older. But now it's like there is a new calm in my life that is like, and it's not because things aren't stressful. It's not because things are that. It's just like you put them in perspective, and you understand, and you it's not just focusing on the bad. You understand how there's so much good and there's so much awesome around you, just in the fact that trees push out leaves every year, and you get that kind of perspective, and it changes how you look at yourself in business and what you really can achieve in business and in life. And I think, so what are you, I don't even know the right questions to ask, dude, because I'm so excited about this. Because so as you're learning this and you trying to learn about human behavior and applying this towards business and how you've seen leaders transform their businesses, what are some of the things that you go, wow, this really has been altering?
Yeah. I'm going to give you a couple of examples, and one of them involves you directly, Damon and Scott and Steve. The four of us have just made a kind of an informal arrangement where we sit with the CEO as an advisory board. And you'd say, okay, all right. What's that? Well, I've written down a way of thinking about it. And I'm going to just flash this up here. I don't know if you can see that, but it says scoping guide. This is a little thing that, and it's got a total of about a dozen boxes on here, but it's got stuff like operations, marketing, product development, strategy, cultures down here. It's got 12 areas that the four of us, no one of us, but the four of us together, we can go ask questions about those things and bring what? 4 more pairs of eyes to that CEO, and he's got a C-suite. They have problems. They think they know the answers. They think they can put it together. And what happens is they do not have the perspective. They just don't have the perspective. And they, depending on the individuals, they may or may not have the sensitivity to the human side, to places where either that CEO or possibly one of his key lieutenants is got 1 foot on the brake and 1 foot on the accelerator and doesn't really know that.
Yeah.
But with a team of 4 of us, where we really fill in, like for instance, Damon is able to do financials. I had an MBA program that was great, and I can read a balance sheet okay, but to watch Damon at this great big organ that he's playing, creating dashboards and ways of relating to business, I learned a lot, and the CEO learned a lot about how to make that happen. Or another fellow named Scott Shumway that brings what was in the goal, that famous book about how you manage constraints within a company, that you have things kind of going along in a pipeline, and somewhere there is a constraint, there is a bottleneck, at least one. Well, there is one major bottleneck. What is it? Let's go figure that out. That's something that I studied a little bit, but Scott really knows how to do that, and so on. So you get this big perspective that you can bring, and all the while it's informed by a sensitivity to the human side. We don't want to push this guy too hard, the CEO. We don't want to let him off the hook either. We want to help him understand that he's got people that may not be doing the best thing for him. All that is general management. It goes clear back to my day of being the quality manager for a pretty big division, when I realized you've got to make the whole business work. That's the top thing that the CEO's got to do. And CEOs can get so distracted by the minutia and by the particulars and by things that are urgent, but not important. Urgent, but not important. As Steve Rice likes to say, that's the Eisenhower matrix. What's urgent, what's important. And we do tend to get swept away by the urgent.
Yeah.
So that's the first of like 3 examples of things that kind of came out of that confluence for me of the left and the right brain. But I think anybody listening in, if there are folks listening in that are not involved with the 4 of us, you can just do this yourself. You can start out with something like this. Just write down all the stuff that a business does, and it's just what you'd expect. It's the 4 things I said: finance, accounting, human resources, facilities, quality, all that, and just assess, and then figure out where your real needs are. But it sure helps to have an extra pair of eyes. So anyway, that's one of those things that I just think it's really helpful. And I worked for a firm for a little while back in New York City, right after my MBA program.
Mm-hmm.
And we did these scopings. We would bring in half a dozen consultants into a mid-sized division of a company and spend 3-4 days with them and just get answers to this. And then we go disappear off in a conference room and put together a PowerPoint that summarized and prioritized, what the big ones are and how they're interrelated. And the value add was enormous, just huge value add to the client.
Yeah. Yeah. So you work a lot with organizational development too. I mean, I've seen the way that you like what you were doing there was laying out the different organizational functions.
Mm-hmm.
You really work about that and to go, okay, now if we're going to have a CRO or we're going to have a general manager, we're going to have a frontline supervisor, this is what they do. And this is how it fits into the organization. You do a lot of that too, don't you?
I do. It winds up, it seems funny, but quite a few of the clients that I've picked up over the last few years are not well organized that way. They're just not. And you say, well, gee, you need an org chart. You need to have staff meetings. And often the answer is, nah, we don't need that stuff. We see each other every day. We know where everybody's at. Sorry, because people do not know what they're being held accountable for.
Yeah.
And who's on first base? They don't. So they need a lot of help getting that right.
Well, and it's interesting, as you said, and we've worked together before on clients, and the interesting perspective that I've gained from working with you is that your work in describing the organization and the positions within it and what they're responsible for ties in directly to the kind of work that I like to be doing, and I do typically with clients, is where we're measuring performance and helping them drive to the next level. Because if you're talking about a frontline supervisor in a production setting, well, and you've laid out what they're responsible for production. Well, what does that mean? We need to define the quantitative and qualitative measures to what success looks like. And that's how working together in some of these situations gives as you talked about with your team in the organization, that's what you really get in a different perspective to show the company that is very good in, could be manufacturing, could be software development, doesn't really matter, but to show them how you apply these different techniques in their organization to really drive the change that they want.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So when you looked at this and you go, you got all this left brain work that you did before, how do you think that left brain and right brain work that you do now, how did that really give you a little different perspective on this?
Good question, Damon. I'm kind of reflecting on that.
Because it is, because there's not a lot of people that you go, okay, they went to MIT and now they're doing this. And and especially you went to MIT for electrical engineering,
right?
And now you're working with a lot more in human behavior and organizational development.
Yeah. I think what happens is I still am highly devoted to the left brain stuff. How to make a research and development organization work, for example. I can talk about that in a minute, but so you're working along on something like that, and you realize that something feels funny. Some little red flag back there says, something feels funny, and you had you not had the kind of training, the kind of either meditation time or self-analysis, you tend to dismiss or not even notice that funny feeling that something a little bit strange is going on here. But instead you say, well, let's see, what is going on here? Something's going on, and you can go ahead and explore it then. But you also have learned over the years, often by making mistakes, about what they now call EQ, about emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
EQ sounds funny, but so you have to learn how to get the languaging and the framing appropriate for who you're trying to talk to, and sometimes you don't even do it. You have somebody else talk to them. But you get sensitive to that there's a human dimension there that
Yeah.
is basically irrational.
Yeah.
Not completely, but irrationality is real dominant in the human side. And I once remember hearing a thing about that great psychologist, that one of the great psychologists of all times. And I thought, okay, that'd be Freud, that'd be Jung, Charles Darwin. What? Psychologist Charles Darwin? And the person was just making the point that so much of what we do is kind of animal.
Yeah.
It's kind of evolutionary, like something I heard the other day that I hadn't ever heard the expression. We have a negativity bias. We tend to see things negative. Something pops up, some new piece of news, and the reason is our brain is wired for survival. And so if we hear a branch go crack behind us, our first impulse is, well, that's a lion about ready to eat me.
Yeah.
That's just how we think. There's a lot of that kind of negativity that's baked into people, and you have to be able to work with it, and yet to get through, because of course there's a lot of really good and really ambitious and really helpful and really wholesome stuff that you see as well, but it can get pretty obscured by the other.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I've got to think too that your left brain work as an engineer and understanding of the scientific method and things like that from that helps you to approach it, the human behavior from a scientific standpoint, is and really weigh alternatives, test theories, and those kind of things as well.
Yep, exactly. That's a good observation, and I do that. And it's sometimes hard to not jump to conclusions. And you say, well, they're screwed up, and that's the end of that. No, you have to. But it's a discipline. It's a discipline to be more scientific about it.
Yeah. Well, Scott's got a question. He says, how do you help people see things they don't naturally see, like a company that is not organized as well as they should be? And, leaders, he gives an example, leaders who are firefighting every day have a difficult time stepping back and seeing the problems. And how do you help them step back and be open to making things better?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's a question for a consultant, because one thing I've learned when I first got into consulting right out of my MBA program, I had this unconscious model. I'm a little bit ashamed to say this, but I did. I'm the well-educated guy. I'm the smart guy. You're the client. You're asking the questions, and so I'm going to tell you. I'm going to just tell you how it works.
Yeah.
So you get your chalkboard up and your pencil prepared, and you write down what I tell you. That doesn't get very far.
No.
It gets you a little bit, but at the end of the day, it really, really doesn't get you very far. So the answer to Scott's question is you really have to do it by asking questions. Even observation isn't quite enough. You do observe, but you have to say, like this one company I spent some time with about 2 years ago. They had a completely disorganized, random thing going on where everybody was doing everything. And I said, do you have an org chart? And the person said, yeah. And I said, could I see it? And the person sitting next to her said, we don't. Well, yeah, of course we do. Well, could I see it? Well, it's not written down. And gradually the conversation came around to, she finally said, no, we don't. And well, how do you know what to do? Well, we just know. We've been together for all these years.
Yeah.
And we just kind of, and gradually, by asking more than one person, usually it's nice to have 2 or 3 people in the room, but to ask questions and let them figure it out. That's the only thing that works as far as I'm
Mhm.
concerned. So that's,
It,
to me, that's the answer to Scott's question.
I think you're 100% there, because it's asking the questions so you understand really well, and they understand the benefits if they maybe change some things or thought about things differently.
Yeah. Yep.
Because you keep exposing, because you need to understand as an
Right.
outside consultant coming in, you need to understand and go, okay, is there really a rock here under this water? If we drop the lever, is there really a rock there, or is it just my mind? And as you do that, the people that you're talking to go, oh, there is a rock here.
Yeah, exactly.
And there is a rock here, and we can build a bridge over it if we do this, or around it, or whatever we got to do. But I love that example, because I used to use it in the factories. You know, I grew up mechanical engineering, operations. That's where I started. And when we were doing improvements or things in the factories, it was all asking questions. It's never telling anybody anything as much as you possibly can. It's always, even if you wanted somebody to do something, you'd always go, what do you think about doing it like this?
Yeah. Yep.
What would we have to do if we can't do it that way? Well, how could we make it work a little differently, but kind of close to that? And just keep asking the questions and keep asking them. And it's so much fun, because it is as a leader or a consultant. I mean, because this is the blast, is when people learn something on their own, come through with that breakthrough, and all you were doing was, not all you were doing, but what you were doing, your role in that was helping them realize what was sitting there in front of them.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, it's
one
a lot
more
of fun.
little piece on that. Again, Scott's very excellent question. This is a technique I picked up out of a book somewhere. You say to them, okay, you got this thing going on. Is that costing you any money? No, it's not costing any money. Well, how about it? Well, okay, maybe it costs a little bit. Well, let's see. Actually, I guess it's costing us quite a bit as a percentage of revenue. So as a percentage of net profit, it's like half of your net profit, right? Geez, yeah, well, I guess it is. That thing really speaks to the CEO and to the C-suite, is how much is it costing you to have that going on?
Yeah.
To have people who run around here with their hair on fire. Well, it doesn't cost us anything. Okay, how about that? Well, okay, it costs a little. Get the cost. Help them get the cost. So that helps too.
That is an awesome way to look at it, because if you're making $1 million and you're selling $10 million a year, but you're making $1 million profit, $100,000 cost is 10%. 10% adds 10% to your profit, just by taking care of that seemingly little thing that in the scheme of $10 million is nothing, but in scheme of it all drops to the bottom line profit. If you fix it, it's a big deal.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's a great perspective on it. And Steve had a big comment here. Wow, covered our faces up. So this is awesome. That's probably better. But yep.
Crisis managers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that whole crisis management, I tell you, when you see an organization make that change, because it's almost like a light switch sometimes, because you go and you go and you go, and then all of a sudden things start to change. And then the next week you go, oh, this is a different week, because we got ahead of the crisis with our planning, and now our planning is working, and there's only 2 crises rather than 10 crises, or it goes down and goes down and goes down. And the better your planning and execution gets, that's something. That's a great point. And Scott said about asking the questions. That's good stuff.
I want to switch to one other thing that kind of gets at a lot of what we've been talking about here. Something that Steve and I have been working on now for a little while. Okay, it's okay to do that.
Let's do it, because we're here to talk about achieving satisfying business results, and we're hitting this hard, so it's good.
Exactly. That's how I'm feeling. I want to talk about leader development. Let's leave the ship off of it. Let's just say
Yeah.
developing leaders. And I'm thinking more like mid-level.
Mm-hmm.
You could apply this at a lot of levels, but emerging, mid-level, and then the top. In particular, and I know sometimes this becomes emotional or political, but I'm going to kind of make the assumption that it shouldn't and it need not. You have three kind of areas. You have the classic leader manager techniques. There's a whole book of them. I mean, you study business school and you get all kinds of things to do about that. Most of them are quite good that I've seen anyway, pretty helpful. And as you live your life, you pick them up along the way. So one is classical, I'm going to say leader techniques. But number two has emerged onto the palette relatively recently. And I think this year, like right now, it's really booming. And that is the global imperative.
Mm-hmm.
We are facing climate change. We're, that movie, Don't Look Up. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's like,
Yes.
whoa, we're facing, it's coming at us. We've had fires down here where we are, Europe and Seattle, and you've had it too, but we've had horrendous fires this year. Let's leave it at that. There's species extinction, there's loss of habitat, there's global warming. So how do you bring that into a business? You think, well, I as an individual, maybe I got an electric vehicle or I eat less meat or whatever. Okay, that's great. You got to do that. And then you have governments. Governments have to be involved in this. It's got to be policy.
Yeah.
But in between is businesses. And boy, I am seeing businesses right, left, center do stuff that is adding to the solution. It is profitable. It benefits their brand. They're making hay on the thing. Now, is there greenwashing? Is there lying? Is there disinformation? Yeah, there's a lot. Unfortunately, I hate to sound like a cynic, but it's there. But there's also a whole lot of people, and Steve in particular has found a lot of people, like half a dozen or 10, that are doing significant things at a high level in their business to help with, I'm going to just say, climate change.
Yeah.
So that's number two. And then number three in your leadership bag is what we talked about a while ago, is your own internal development. And that does not lend itself to a cookie cutter or a recipe or go do it this way. You've got to find that for yourself. And like you just described, Damon, you in the last couple of years, you have managed to figure some of that out.
Yeah.
Carve out a way for yourself. And like you said earlier, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, absent that, you're going to stumble. You're going to not be as good a leader as you could. So
100%. And I think what we miss in this internal development, in leadership, and just in general life skills, right, is like anything, you plateau. I mean, we don't know it all. We're not born knowing it all. We don't get out of high school knowing it all. We don't get out of, if you've never gone to any education past that, you're not done. And if you are, that's where you're going to plateau.
Yep.
You get what you put out. I mean, as far as your skills and the way you look at it, if you're not happy with your life, a lot of it is what you're doing.
Yep. Absolutely.
The rest of the world is just kind of going on outside of you. And there's so many choices that we have to make. And when we talk about those being professional choices, doesn't matter if I'm gone to MIT like yourself, or I went out and started working and I'm a construction person and I'm building houses, whatever. I'm a welder in a manufacturing place. There are so many things that we can be doing that improve our life, our skill set, that just continue to help us move forward in the direction we want, whether it's in something personal or something professional. But this internal development to create the whole person, because in the 90s and the early 2000s, it was like, don't let your personal life bleed over into work. You just don't. You don't. I mean, it doesn't matter. You just don't. And what we've come to realize, I think, in the last 10 years, maybe more, last few years, even more yet, is that the work-life balance is, a lot of us are simply not going to have it. So we really need to understand how to integrate work and life in a harmonious way that allows us to be happy in our lives and our careers. And it takes a lot of it takes this internal development. It's like, how do you turn this thing into a harmonious existence, or whatever you want to call it? I mean, I'm getting out there a little bit, but it really is understanding that and how you do it, because let's face it, most business owners, there's no work-life balance.
Right.
There's none. And high-level executives, and people talk about work-life balance. Yes, you can always work on it, and there's separation and boundaries and all the things that you need to work on. But at the end of the day, when the house is on, when the things are on fire, it still comes back to you.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with this in a different way? How do you structure your life in a different way that it's integrating the life, the career, and the life, and making sure that it doesn't because it's This is not, when you look at this stuff, it's not it's not, or I have a great life, I have a great family, or I have a great career. It's not, it's it's that internal development in the, like you said before, classical leadership techniques or leader techniques, and this internal development, I think that really powers that.
Yep. That's so well said, Damon. Just the idea of balance means we got two separate entities that are opposing on the opposite side of the scale. That is right there a misconception.
Yep.
Maybe for some people it may not be, but for people that we're talking to, it's a misconception.
Yeah.
Well, that's what Steve and I are working on, this thing called the Globally Conscious Leader.
Yeah.
And it's a program. We're actually putting it together. It's going to be, we're just building it right now. It's going to be modular videos that people can sign up for and get involved with. So we're working on that as we speak.
That's cool. When you step back to the global imperative that you talked about, I always think about the benefit of understanding the global footprint of business, right? I mean, because and what that really looks like and what that means, and the economic benefits. I mean, you look at, and I grew up in not old, but traditional manufacturing. And you look at something as simple and as difficult as CNC machining of metal and plastics and all this other stuff. It used to be that all the little chips that were done from that would just get thrown away, right? You didn't worry about them. Now, when you recycle some of that stuff, it's worth a lot of money. And now when you look at it, that part of that, it actually is part of your profit. You consider that in part of your profit, because if I take a 5-pound piece of metal and I turn it into a 1-pound piece, there's 4 pounds of extra metal that I can recycle, and I can reclaim part of that as profit towards my company. These kind of things are not only good environmentally, and it will help generations to come. And I mean, hey, people can there's both sides of climate change, there's both sides of this other stuff. But when you were talking about something earlier, you can decide what you want to decide, and that's fine. There are economic benefits to thinking about how you do this. And I've talked to Harry Mosier from the Reshoring Initiative here in the US, and he speaks a lot about our initial thought is, hey, we got to go to China, or we got to go offshore to get something less expensive. And when you look at it overall, the long-term costs and the inventory costs and everything else that add up, and he's got a great cost calculator on his on the Reshoring Initiative website, it's not probably a lot less cost in a lot of cases. And when you consider that, if you're trying to have a more globally conscious footprint, that can oftentimes push you well over the top. And there's a lot of reasons why this changed. And look at the last couple of years. I mean, look, that really forces us to rethink what we do. And
Yep.
you look at, if I was in the car company or making anything like that relies on chips, I would be thinking about, okay, yeah, it's cool that we can bring some from offshore, but we got to have some that are available here when we
Yeah.
need them, and do that, because it's cost them billions of dollars
Yep.
and not be able to
When
do
I
it.
was at Hewlett Packard, we had a Chinese manufacturer. They did a pretty good job, but the chips had to sit on a boat for quite a few weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and that turns out to be a killer.
Yeah.
It just did. I mean, just the shipping time, and when you called them up, it was a real time offset. So you had to
Yeah.
either call them early morning or late at
Yeah.
night. Just
Yeah.
the challenge of all that versus right there in Silicon Valley, just do it. And
Yeah.
then your story about getting the chips, the other kind of chips out of the made piece of aluminum. Steve Rice likes to talk about the circular economy, where you can just imagine all the material flows in a complete
Mm-hmm.
closed circle instead of stuff going flying out. So you got 5 pounds of initial stuff, and now you got 4 pounds of metal that you're just going to throw out of this circle. The industry that Steve worked in, a lot of it was outdoor stuff, and a lot of that was apparel. People just throw away an old jacket and buy a new jacket. Well, now there's people that take waders, the kind of things that you put over your big boots when you go fishing. They take those things and they have a way of making them into something good.
Yeah.
It's just really impressive. There's another guy that makes it's called Gear Aid. And you think Gear Aid, like my gears? No, your gear, like your jacket.
Mm-hmm.
And he has these patches. And I think it's going to come where a jacket with a patch on it is better looking to our eye than a brand new Patagonia jacket. Because now this guy's got a 10-year-old jacket and he's making it last a long time. So the circular economy, the thing stays within the economy the whole time. And that is non-trivial, because as you kind of hinted at there, Damon, you've got a supply chain. You've got stuff coming in, then you do your thing, and then you've got stuff going out. And there's a carbon footprint associated with all three of those elements. And we tend to say, well, my carbon footprint's tiny. I just have a little machine shop. I just burn some electricity and that's it. Not really. You've got a supply chain incoming and going out. That's all part of this big circular economy.
Yeah.
So we've got to start thinking that way. We just do.
Well, it makes economic sense too.
And it makes economic
like
sense.
we said, it's some of this stuff is economic. And then the other thing that happens now when we look at the economy now and think about it is that it's very hard, and I think it will continue to be hard for several years at least to hire employees, because we have what people have not been addressing is that people with a bit more age have decided that it's time to quit working. And we have we talked about the baby boomer, the silver tsunami, whatever the heck you want to talk about, for a lot of years. But this, honestly, the last couple of years have just made people decide, I'm not going to work anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not going to work anymore. And older people, right?
Yep.
And that's a studied population a lot when I was younger in some of the businesses I was running, to understand what this aging looks like. And when you look at it on a bell curve, oh my goodness. And there's another one coming in the millennials or Gen Z. I get it mixed up. Gen, whatever, the after millennials. Sorry, that's my son.
Yeah.
But there's a big bubble again, right? But what I'm saying is that hiring people want to work for companies that stand by good things, are globally conscious, are trying to treat people as best they can, and really value the people. These are things that are not going to be optional, I believe,
right?
in many regards. And it's going to be just you can make it a benefit, or it can be a cost of doing business, but you're going to have to do it.
Yep.
It's going to happen. It's happened more every day. I mean, because you mentioned Patagonia, and when you look at a company like that, and they both those fronts, trying to treat employees very well and the environment very well, it's become a way of what they have to do to be a leader in the game.
Yeah, exactly right. It's no longer optional.
Yeah.
Not if you want to do a good job.
Yeah. Oh man, it's been so awesome.
This has
Awesome
been
having you on.
fun.
See, John, it was like you were wondering, oh yeah, what am I going to talk about? Here we're almost an hour into this, and usually we stop at about 45 minutes. I'm like, oh man, we could talk for another hour.
Yeah.
So it's so great to have you on, John, because your perspective in organizational development, the human behavior, and how you really helping clients figure that out and turn it into better business results. I always love talking about it with you.
Yep. Me too. This has
Uh,
just been great, Damon. Just super.
yeah.
Just the way you kind of come alive, and then it turns out you have an experience with this whole thing all by yourself. So
Yeah.
been great.
Good
Been just
stuff.
great.
Good stuff. Well, hey, I want to say thanks so much for Steve and Scott, Curtis, and Ali. I saw Ali Dakrab from Lebanon. That's cool as heck.
Wow.
Anybody else that's listening, hey, thanks so much for joining us today. Appreciate you. Appreciate the comments. Appreciate taking a look at our videos and talking. And reach out to John if you want to talk to him. So, John, what's the best way to contact you if somebody wants to contact you?
Yeah, probably email. It's just simple. John at Lamy Consulting.
All right. Real good. We'll have that in our show notes here, and we'll have it on our blog when we put it on there and everything. So thanks so much for being here, John Lamy, John. I don't know why I said your last name there, but I get excited, and I do. If everybody's listened to more than one of these, I get excited and I just blabble on once in a while. But John, thanks so much for being here. I really enjoyed it. And I think you may be the first person that graduated from MIT that I talked to.
Oh,
that's cool.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. But thanks so much. Have a great day, everyone. And we will be back again later.
All right.
Bye. Just hang on for a second there, John, and we'll